Now, we did ask Paul to join us, but he wouldn't talk to us at all. It's a shame he didn't show up for Q&A this morning either, otherwise we could have held him down on the couch. But more willing to share their opinions is our panel this week, Mathew Hooton, who has a column in the NBR, and commentator Willie Jackson. Tēnā kōrua.
Kia ora, Scotty.
Now, Willie, we know you weren't happy with Paul Holmes's article, so we'll start with Mathew. Mathew, what's your opinion? Did Paul Holmes come across as a racist?
Well, I actually, as you said, I wrote a column in the NBR lampooning Paul Holmes really for the extremity of his language and lampooning Hone Harawira for the extremity of his language in response. And I think that often when there's debates like this, putting the word some in front of the word Maori or some in front of the word Pākehā would be a good idea for columnists because it puts things in perspective. You know, Hone Harawira responded in his column by saying that Pākehā had made Maori hit their children. Hone Harawira said that it was Pākehā that imposed disease on Maori and the Bible and so on and so forth. Well, if I wanted to as a Pākehā, I could be all shocked and outraged and say that he was referring to me. But he wasn't referring to me.
So both are making generalisations.
You know, you just relax about these things. And there's a group of people, and Willie is one of them, who like to try to make out that it's a personal attack on them, when I think it was clear, even though the words were over the top, that Paul Holmes was referring to the renter mob, a small group of people at Waitangi, and he wasn't referring to Willie Jackson. He wasn't referring to, you know, Paul Norris, who's Maori and the most successful businessman. He wasn't referring to Rob McLeod. He wasn't referring to Piri Wipu. And yet Hone Harawira and others have a commercial and political interest.
But because he did make those generalisations, he was referring to everybody. Well,
if people want to be so dim-witted about it that they read these things and read a column like that and say, oh, he's talking about me, when quite clearly it wasn't. As I say, that would be me like reading Hone Harawira's column and think, oh, Hone is attacking me.
But it is a slur on the Māori people as a whole. It is a slur on the Pākehā people as a whole.
I mean, for example, the absolute dickheads from Christchurch, the white resistance movement, are out on the streets protesting, and I'm sure that they will be rightly mocked and attacked. Okay. But as a Pākehā person, I'm not going to get upset. I understand that's not me, that's them.
Willie, Mathew got a point?
No, he's got no point.
Why not?
Talking a load of rubbish, as usual. Matthew's better than that, actually. He's a bloke who opposed the Orewa speech in terms of Don Brash, so I'm disappointed when I hear this sort of nonsense this morning. The whole Holmes article, and don't get me wrong, I like Paul Holmes. I told him last week we're taking him out of Ngāti Pro because he said he feels Ngāti Pro, but he might want to join Tūhoe
freedom of
now.
Speech. What's wrong with him?
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with freedom of speech. I'm one person who said he's allowed to give his view. We're allowed to challenge. When Holmesy gives those sort of views, though, he reinforces the rednecks and racists in this country. That's the problem with it. So Michael Laws goes on Talkback and says, finally, Holmes, you've come home. That's what Michael Laws says. Leighton Smith celebrates Holmes, Paul Henry, and you see Māori have to deal with that, and it's all right for Mathew to sort of dismiss it all, but he doesn't have to deal with the racism that comes through over the lines. He doesn't have to deal with it in the workplace, and that's the problem. And we need people like Mathew not to be apologists for Paul Holmes, but to remind him of the damage that he's done.
I'm the guy that wrote the newspaper column lampooning him for his language, so I think we have to put
this in perspective. At the end of the day, there weren't many people who complained about it, and there were hundreds who went online to support Paul Holmes.
That's right.
So here's just a few of the comments.
At long last, Paul, a public figure, has come out and stated the blindingly obvious. Waitangi Day and its associated bitterness and reverse racism must go.
What a brilliant column. Thanks for having the courage to say what everyone else is thinking.
Waitangi Day is a pile of shit, and it should be abolished at the same time we burn the bloody treaty. Tomorrow will be fine. If the Maoris want to start the civil war they keep threatening us with, then the day after tomorrow is free in my diary.
You see, that's what it unleashes, you see. That sort of rubbish. Now, in terms of the complaints and whatnot, the Māori complaints will be much smaller than the Pākehā numbers, or I should say the general numbers. Doesn't mean a thing, Scotty. If you did a poll tomorrow, get rid of the treaty, 75% of the country would get rid of it. You know, homosexual rights, probably 70% of the country would get rid of them. Means nothing. All I'm saying is that we need to be brave about this. We need Mathew, people like Mathew, who's been quite a liberal bloke in terms of Māori issues. We need them to say, hey, Paul, that was uncalled for. You should apologise. Now, he's right. If Hone says something or if I say something, we're chased straight away. Paul, all his mates look after him. He has a week off.
There's a point there from Willie. Should Paul Holmes apologise?
He's not going to, is he? I mean,
but should he?
I think that he should apologise for some of the extremity of the language. But, as I say, this is a newspaper column. If people choose to read far more into it than was intended when he was bashing it out late at night, that is their prerogative.
You know how influential how influential a column can be. You write for some newspaper, and people take a lot of what people like you or Holmes say, and then they use it and they validate their racism. That's the problem, Matthew.
And Paul Holmes has been ticked off by the authorities, by officers of Parliament, as we see the race relations. This is just a process working. What is ridiculous is for people to say that, he's attacking all Maori when he says those things, because it was quite clear from the context that was not his intention. Now, I accept the way he wrote the column was so inelegant, and I'm sure it was written very late at night, that it had the risk of
had a few drinks.
It had the risk of coming across that way. But it's actually the then you read Hone Harawere's column.
That was a brilliant column.
It was a ridiculous. It was. I'll tell you what.
And you're spinning stories again.
It was very similar to Paul Holmes' column, and then what it said was it lumped everyone together and said Pākehā brought in the Bible. Pākehā brought in the
does that mean that people
like
myself, for example, we're not allowed to be offended by what Paul Holmes has written?
Well, no, you can be offended.
Especially about us not educating our children. I mean, my wife and I put extreme effort into educating our children, and then we get someone like Paul Holmes writing that in the national newspaper.
If you choose to think that he was referring to you, then that is...
Matthew, have you talked to Paul Holmes?
You know as well as I do that he's a mate of yours, he's a mate of yours, he's a mate of mine.
That's right.
And he was not referring to all Maori.
He is a good bloke. He's done some good things, no doubt about it. We've told him off, but you haven't spoken to him. And sometimes late at night, after a couple of drinks, I'm not saying he had a couple of drinks, Scotty, sometimes people's resentment comes out, Matthew. And that's what's happened here. And Holmes has let himself down. We've got every right to challenge
this issue. Matthew, I want to ask you a question. Is this issue too important to be taking potshots, for political commentators to be taking potshots in national newspapers?
This isn't the context. This is a context, I think, his column, of the stupidity that we do see at Waitangi from a small group every single year. And over the years, the head of state's been throwing a black T-shirt at them. There's been anger and spitting. Don Brash, leader of the opposition, has mud thrown. I mean, this is actually a minority of what goes on at Waitangi.
But what about the lies?
And he was commentating on that thing. Now, I bet most people don't even remember what this year's Waitangi protests were about.
Here's the problem.
Willie, do you remember what were they about, this year's Waitangi protests? What was the topic?
They were talking about state enterprises and the
Willie, I want to talk about Honeka, because Honeka passed away this week. Champion of Māori language, Māori rights, champion for our Māori children. What would he have made of all of this?
Well, he would have put Matthew in a headlock to start off with. There's no doubt about it. He was a champion, no doubt about this. And we have to. He would challenge someone like Holmesy, and he did that through the years, eh? And we're all grateful to the work he did on this show, on Māori Radio. He was the chairman of our Māori Radio network. I mean, he was a fighter, and he used to come on and debate these issues with different Pākehā commentators and talk about the effects that this has on Māori communities. And you can't minimise it, Scotty. You can't minimise it. And in terms of the Holmes article, Hone would have gone through and said, why are you telling lies, Holmesy? The principles of the treaty are clearly outlined in the Court of Appeal case. You know that, and I know that, Matthew. Why do you generalise so much with Māori? Most Māori are great parents. Most Māori don't bash their kids.
Exactly.
That's what Honeka would do.
Thank you.
And Matthew?
Thank you very much, Willie.
I think you'd find Honeka would have bigger things to worry about than some stupid comments.
We're going to wrap up here, gentlemen. Thank you both very much, Willie. Thank you very much.
It's all right.
Appreciate both of you coming in. Mathew Hooton, Willie Jackson, Te Nara Korua.